Hello and good Friday evening, everybody. Happy weekend. I hope you all had a great week and you all got enjoyable weekends ahead of you planned. I had to double check to see what time I'd scheduled this stream because the 7:30 start time is a little bit out of character for me, but I'm glad that I did. Um, it means I can start early, finish early, and I do have to kind of hard stop at in about an hour and 15 minutes. So I think we'll get just over an hour in this stream. Wesker, thank you for asking. I've had a busy week. Busy good. It's been wonderful engaging with everybody regarding book launch and doing all the activities around that. It's incredibly there's lots of challenging new stuff that I've got to think about, but also releasing new content as well. It was amazing to get the slavery video out, the old why Britain killed slavery. That's a part one of it at least. It was really nice to release that because I've been working on that for an incredibly long time, and it was really satisfying releasing it. I don't know how many people who are on the live stream now have watched that yet. I dropped that yesterday, and I'm really proud of that piece of work. So I hope that you take some time to watch it if it hasn't shown up in your if it hasn't shown up in your feed yet. We know what YouTube's like. It's a little bit selective. But if it does show up on your feed, give it a watch. Make sure your notifications are on. Yeah, that's a really nice piece of research that I've put out there. It's taken a long time. I've been working on it for 7 months. So hope it returned value. Let me know if you've watched it. And if you've watched it, let me know what you thought of it. Welcome to everybody whose names I can see in the chat. Big shout out to our newest member, Marsha Barrett. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Your support is very much appreciated. And yeah, welcome to the community. Well, I mean, you're part of the community anyway, but welcome to the inside community. There's actually a couple. I don't like hiding stuff behind paywalls, but I do like to make things easier and release little things that I let out just to my patrons and my YouTube community. So I don't like the idea of basically making stuff like, well, you're not going to see this unless you're a member. But I do little things like if I've cut up a documentary for the channel, I'll release the whole thing on the paid version. And I'm trying to do the occasional lecture as well. Things like just talking through pieces of research that I've done. So things that if I don't put out on the main channel, I'm not kind of like withholding stuff. But at the same time, I think returning some value to my paid members is always worthwhile because I do appreciate them very much for my upkeep. Let me give a shout out to everybody in the chat. Wesker, what's going on? How you doing? Darth Skywalker, good to have you. Khalid, good to have you here. Passport and Profits, I'm glad you've managed to finally catch a live. Ashley, you've been here pretty much every single live stream that I've done. So amazing stuff, man. Thank you very much. Darth, you thought it was a good presentation. I'm glad. Wesker, the same, said it's excellent. I especially like the old and new comparison between those groups. Yeah, that to me was the biggest standout. So Wesker's point to me, that was like one of the biggest standouts to me. I was like, this is a scandal. Why is no one talking about this? And here's another one that's going to blow your mind, Wesker. So I was trying to work out how to do the calculation because I'm going to do a bit of a spoiler, by the way, those of you who haven't seen it. Britain, when slavery was abolished in the UK, when the UK does stuff like that, you always know there's something nefarious going on. Okay, so when they abolished slavery, and I'm sure you've all heard of that massive slavery compensation payout that went out. And it was £20 million. And that doesn't sound like a lot in today's day and age. And actually, if you ask like a chat GPT or just try and run like a basic numerical conversion, yeah, that doesn't quite encapsulate what it was, because it will calculate something along the lines of like something between 20 and 40 billion pounds in today's value. But that isn't the full story. I think you get the full story in terms of what this is worth in GDP equivalents, because that tells you, that will measure what was paid out against what the nation was generating in terms of wealth. Okay, so I thought, well, that's a fair equivalence. So, and no one's done this calculation before. When I looked back at the GDP of the UK or Great Britain at that time, that £20 million payout was worth 40%. So they had a GDP of around £50 million. Yeah, that's what Great Britain would generate annually. Okay, and that's from all exploits. That's everything, every single drop, every single dime that goes through, that was being generated by the entire nation. That's every worker, every business, everything. That's what a nation is generating. It's not tax, it's nothing. It's literally what is being generated on every measurable scale. So when I ran it through that 40% of the nation's GDP, here's the interesting thing. That works out to 1.2 trillion pounds when converted today. And here's the amazing thing. The 2008 bankers bailout has been calculated to that exact same figure of 1.2 trillion. That's just a coincidence, by the way. So both bailouts, and we can see how people in the UK know, actually in America, you guys know, we all know how debilitating those payouts are. Okay, the austerity measures that hit the UK hasn't recovered. We have, in terms of like public sector services to the UK, that they don't exist anymore. They've been thoroughly dismantled. You don't really get anything. The only thing that really survived, and that's hanging on by a thread, is the NHS, the National Health Service, and primary and secondary schools, the educations. That's really the only things that are hanging on by a thread. Everything else has been entirely decimated by this humongous bailout for the banks. So everyone who lives in the UK knows what kind of a crime it was and how transformative it's been in terms of the transfer of wealth. The wealth gap in the UK, as I'm sure it's the same in America, I'm going to speak from the UK perspective, the wealth gap is huge. It's no hidden thing. The rich in the UK, when I say rich, I'm talking about the people who are on the right side of the payout, have become astronomically rich. The gap is huge. So if you're working, if you're middle class in the UK, you are just a part of the new working class. Yeah, that you got the middle class and all those people who think that they're down here, and then there's a massive gap, and then you've got these people with crazy wealth. And you had the invention of that. The start of that was this initial slave compensation payout. These guys were given an astronomical amount of wealth. I can't contextualize it enough. It made them, and I said it in the video, made them into virtual oligarchs. So they created an oligarchy via this payout. These people were given a stupid amount of money that the UK couldn't afford. It plunged Britain into debt, and they only paid it off 10 years ago. So it was nearly 2 centuries. No, it wasn't 10 years ago, was it? Yeah, it was 10 years ago. I feel it was 2014 or something. I can't remember. But anyway, it was around 10 years ago. They just finished paying it off, basically. So we're talking about a debt that lasted nearly 2 centuries. That's how big it was. To pay off slave owners, by the way. Yeah, not. And then this is the same nation who says they can't afford or don't owe reparations. And I always find the entire reparations, oh, we don't owe you anything. It's like, well, you compensated these slaveholders. Surely you could compensate. You can find compensation when you really want to. But here's my argument. And if you want to know my full, if you watch Slavery, the Full Story Part 3, that's another series that I've done. I don't believe we should limit the reparations argument to slavery. I think that's one of the big tricks they're trying to play at the moment. We need to look at what happened post-slavery. Okay. Well, this is not what this live stream is about, but that's what I'm talking about at the moment. Okay. Post-slavery, the theft that has been committed against melanated people in America has been astronomical. And I dive into that in detail when I talk about sundown towns and the amount of black communities that were deliberately destroyed, the amount of wealth transfer, the amount of land acquisition that took place. That is what needs to be calculated, because that's humongous. That's humongous. Think about Tulsa and then multiply that by a couple thousand. And that's when you're going to get to the figure that is owed to blacks in America. And it's the same for blacks in Africa. They don't argue because technically there's no history of slavery in Africa. Africans think they have no argument. I think there's a huge argument for reparations in Africa, but it's based on colonialism and imperialism. Okay, a huge debt. It's not just, oh, return our artifacts. There's a massive amount of money owed to these places for the thefts that took place. So it's just a different calculation method, I guess, more than anything. Anyway, I'm spoiling too much. Watch it is the takeaway from that preamble that I just gave you. Watch that new documentary that's put up because I think it's worthwhile watching. Yes, and the stuff that's going in the chat right now from people, I concur. There's so much. I actually wouldn't mind just reading through these comments, but I can't just, lie to people. The thumbnail's on the screen. Let's have a bit of fun with this. This is going to be really, really lightweight. So now that we've got the heavy revies out of the way, okay, let's have a bit of fun with this because I watched this the other day. By the way, I can't stand Piers Morgan. I can't express to you guys how much I dislike this guy. In fact, if you look on the left of my screen at the moment, those are two people who are probably in my top 10 extant persons who I don't like in the world. They're both in my top 10. Like, literally, I can't stand Piers Morgan. He is a vile human being in every measure, shape, and form. And I know he's kind of like trying to reinvent himself with his new show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, trying to appear as kind of like a straight talking, I don't sit on the political spectrum, everyone. He's a fully right-wing, race-baiting, horrendous human being. He just happens to be able to wrap up his disgusting inhumanity. He's not, and the thing about it is he's not even that, like, he's not even that literate. People try. I know he's given this whole new thing. It's like, no, Piers is just he's just a vile moron. Sorry, I actually cannot stand the guy. But anyway, I guess people think they deserve a second chance or whatever. Maybe he's changed. I don't think so. I think he's just kind of like gone into a new grift now. Those of you who aren't into the UK, he used to be the editor of the Daily Mirror in the UK, and that's a tabloid paper. And I think he got fired. It might have been to do with Princess Diana's phone being tapped. I think he might have been implicated in that. But he was doing a whole bunch of horrendous stuff. And yeah, he's just not a nice person at all. But since then, he's gone to America and tried every grift to reinvent himself. Now he's got his own independent platform. And with all due respect, he's doing very well. Every time he releases a video, it just goes straight into the millions. He knows how to get people that people want to see and discussions that people want to hear. He knows how to field them. So I'll give him his props there. But I don't think I'll ever like him. Next, we have Zahi Hawass. We all know who he is. Needs no introduction. I mocked him in my latest short, if you haven't seen it. I do like having a mockery of Zahi Hawass. He's a bit crazy. And next, we have a guy called Dedunking, who I don't know that much about. But apparently he's one of these kind of like, he sits on that conspiracy fence. So he's got, I'm not sure if he's got a similar outlook to Graham Hancock, where it's kind of like, yeah, that kind of like outlook where he's kind of like doing conspiracy theories. And then we have Jimmy Corsetti, who also seems to be building a reputation as kind of more of a conspiracy theorist. I was introduced to him by someone else regarding the Atlantean theory of the Reichardt structure being Atlantis, which obviously I can ride with that. It's in West Africa, cool stuff. If Atlantis is in Mauritania, it makes a lot of sense, and it actually coincides with some of the research that I've been doing. So it's a possibility. I'm not going to say it's the one, and it actually is, because I just haven't done enough research to put my hat there. But since then, I think he's not sure if he's slipped more into the alternative history space. But it was interesting hearing him on this. So I watched this, and I'm gonna kind of like watch it with you guys. I'm probably gonna get demonetized on this particular video, I'd imagine. I kind of don't care. Let's watch it together and just have a little bit of a yeah, have a little bit of a discussion, have some fun with it, see where we land on this. Because I think I titled this video "You Won't Believe Whose Side I'm On," and I was surprised, because I was like, for some of the arguments, I was like, so it's kind of like you'll see what I mean when we get there. What does Mike say here? It's like watching two dogs meet and sniff each other's bums. Yeah, that's relatively fair. This is quite a powerful quote. I'm going to put this on the screen, Rodney. I like what you've written here. It says, this is going back to obviously my talk about the video that I've just posted. He said, colonialism, slavery, and imperialism, all indescribably vile. But truth is, nothing trumps the vanquishment of culture and heritage. I think I can ride with that. That is the ultimate theft. And here's where I'll go into just drop a little dime of conspiracy. Okay. The greatest wealth you can acquire from another nation is not their gold. It's not their minerals. It's not the resources beneath their soil. It's their historical legacy. I'm just going to put that out there. Okay. Those of you who know what I'm talking about, if that's kind of like one of those, if you know things that I'm saying there. Okay. That's the greatest wealth you can acquire from a nation. If you can steal their historical legacy and successfully pass it off as your own, that is the ultimate theft. That's worth more than all of the gold in any nation. Guarantee you that. But yeah, let's leave that out there, and let's now watch some video, man. Cool. Let's get into it. All right, because we don't have long. We've got like that's 18 minutes down, so we got about an hour, just under an hour, to have some fun with this. So let's go. All right, I'm gonna play. As it plays, guys, you know the deal. Hit 1 when audio starts to come through, just so I know the audio is working. If it's not, complain. Okay, let's go.
Who should work in the pyramids? You have to bring scientists from a museum, from a university, but you cannot bring an amateur from New York or London.
You want to squash debate involving, conspiracy theorists and everything. All we got to do is go in and look. We know where it's at. We could drill a hole. This is doable.
This is the pyramid of Egypt. This is something valuable. This is one of the 7 wonders of the world. Yep. You just can go and boom and drill like this.
When you were on Joe Rogan, you said that you didn't know what Zep Tepi was. And as the premier Egyptologist in the world, you do know the Egyptian creation myth. Would you mind just explaining it to us real quick, so that to kind of vindicate yourself and show the world you do know what Zep Tepi is?
I teach the Egyptian creation, but I'm saying this term that you're talking about, I never heard of it.
Are you saying on the record there has been no explanation?
Let me throw this one out there actually to everyone. Who was familiar or who is familiar with Zep Tepi? Because I don't watch any of Graham Hancock's stuff. So let me know if you're familiar or what you know of Zep Tepi. How mainstream is it? Because I'm going to be honest with you guys. It didn't ring a bell to me until it actually came up in the discussion. So where does it hail from? What kind of Sapat, what kind of nome does it hail from? Is it something that's written in a particular tomb? What text are we getting it from? What's the story? I'd like to know more about this Zep Tepi. Smash teaches it. Okay, that's cool. Yurok, it'll be cool to hear a bit more about that, because I'm not entirely familiar. Ask Smash Yurok if you can, where it comes from, what kind of documents? Where do we find the attestations? It'll be interesting to know.
For an exploration in the way that Jimmy Corsetti says.
Jimmy, this conspiracy theory that you do have is wrong completely. We are not hiding anything.
To his Legion.
It's on the king list. Which one? Manetho's. Which king list is it on? That's interesting. I got my Manetho's king list here. If I missed that, that would be a bit embarrassing. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Interesting. Keep putting stuff in there. I'll see if I can find it.
Legion of admirers, Dr. Zahi Hawass is the world's top expert on Egypt's mighty pyramids, and for good reason. Throughout an illustrious career, Dr. Hawass has served as the Chief Inspector of the Great Pyramids, Director General of the Giza Monuments, and the Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities in Egypt. His book, Giza and the Pyramids, is considered the definitive account. But to his critics, he's an academic gatekeeper, an elitist of Egyptology who is preventing others from interrogating the real truth about how, when, and why the pyramids were built. Many in Joe Rogan's audience felt that way after his appearance earlier this year.
Most of the information that's written on pyramids are wrong.
See, I feel like they should have played my video here. That would have been cool. In my book, why do I have to go to the internet? I go to my book. That's what they should have played. That would be better than this.
Most of it?
Most of it.
In archaeology books?
In archaeology books.
Really?
Except me and Mark Leaner.
You guys are the only ones that have it right?
Because have been working in Giza for the last 57 years of my life. I excavated every piece of sand.
Well, in this,
and there is and I've talked about this in my Zahi Hawass video already, but there is a very strong degree of narcissism and control, and very controlling nature. The way Zahi Hawass speaks, and this is coming from someone who observes academic, he doesn't speak like an academic. Everything is personalized to kind of giving himself credit, and he speaks far more like a journalist than an academic, and I think people pick up on that, which is troubling.
A special edition of Uncensored, Dr. Zahi Hawass will join me to discuss his incredible work, and we'll be joined by two of his most high-profile critics from the alternative archaeology community. You say the truth about the pyramids has yet to be revealed, and we'll bring those two gentlemen in shortly. But first of all, Dr. Hawass, welcome to Uncensored. Let me just ask you, first of all, what was your reaction to the reaction you got when you appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast? Because a lot of it was very negative.
No, when I give any talk about pyramids, I expect the person who interviewed me to read about pyramids or to read about our work. I am sorry, when I did this last interview, I didn't see that Mr. Rogan did really read anything that we published. And that's why I was trying to refer to our excavation, to our book, and so. But I
partly feel like he's defended his book here because I came for him. I was right to refer to my book. No, this is me being silly. Let me give a shout out quickly to Surfactant. The very first rulers of the King's List are from Zep Tepi, at least AI says so. Okay, and I remember Graham Hancock talking about it years ago. I'm gonna have a look at that. I know there's several King's Lists, but I need to have a little look through. That's fine. So Zep Tepi being a location, first kings are from there. Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, needed to know.
I'm sorry that he said that this show was the worst he did, and after that he said it was good. It's his opinion, but I do, when I talk about evidence of how the Egyptian built the pyramids, I present all the archaeological evidence that I do have. In the other side, I don't see any evidence that anyone can give me to say that pyramids built by so and so. And that was my point. My point that I have been excavating in Egypt for the last 57 years. I excavated every piece of sand at Giza Plateau.
So, and here's probably one of the biggest problems. I think Hawass has done a good job at collating evidence to suggest that there were people who worked in and around the pyramids, who had jobs at the pyramids. I think he struggled to prove, or all of the evidence he's presented is very circumstantial, because what is lacking is just any real conclusive piece of literature that says this, we cut stones and placed them at level 1 of the pyramids, we did this level. All he's got is these circumstantial burials of people who did work in and around the pyramid complex, and it's all very circumstantial. None of it is significant enough for people to put their hat in the ring and say, yes, these are definitely the pyramid builders. You're just finding people who had jobs in and around the pyramids, buried in and around the pyramids, but without any strong, and even the finding of the tools. I mean, we're finding like little handfuls of tools here and there, nothing on the scale to match the scale of the pyramids that were built. So there's just, and I think this is where, when you speak in extremes, he doesn't turn around and say, I think there's a possibility that these people, he say, we have definitely found and located the pyramid builders. They were here. These are the two. And he does, and he kind of goes off on one. And he always speaks with those kinds of extremes of certainty and not improbabilities, which is something that is probably far more expected from someone who's in a senior position in Egyptology. And this is probably why he gets a bad rap. Let me give a quick shout out to D Griff. It says, I feel like Hawass is just reading from a script. He doesn't sound confident or convincing about what he's saying. I'll double on that. I recently watched a video. Maybe I'll play it if I can find it in time. Brother Jabari from Sarnetta TV went to one of Hawass's talks and kind of called him out on the racism and the race of the Egyptians. And his arguments were, Hawass's response, I should say, were the biggest gaslight and lack of conviction that you'll ever hear in an argument. It was so, he just had to kind of like, I think his default response was to talk about the Kushites and 25th dynasty. Yes, we had a black dynasty. It's like, no. You clearly are hearing what is being said. Okay, you're clearly hearing what's being said. No one's talking about the 25th dynasty. They are an addition. We're talking about all of the entirety. You can't raise that 25th dynasty argument to us, because my response will simply be, well, and this is an ignorant argument, by the way, but to return that ignorance, I'll say, well, the Arabs didn't invade until 700 AD. Okay, we're not talking about invading classes. We're talking about the native population, and you can't claim that you are the native population. In the same way, you can't turn around to people who are black and say they descend from the 25th dynasty, or the 25th dynasty were the only black people, the Kushites were the only blacks around. It's a very invalid and stupid argument that they raised there. But there you go. Thank you for that comment, D Griff. And Rich James Beach says, Bounty Eliano to the chat. I don't know what that means. Sorry, Elanio. Bounty Elanio. I don't know what that means. You'll have to explain that. But thank you. I appreciate your donation anyway. Let's carry on.
Then when I present a theory or any idea, I present it with evidence. I'm not talking about something on air. No, I'm talking about what we have been discovered at Giza for the last 50 years.
But let me ask you, if you don't mind me just quibbling about one thing. Have you really examined every grain of sand at Giza?
We did.
That was a good question by Piers, by the way. It's important because, you know, like I said, once again, someone in his position shouldn't be speaking in hyperbole. They shouldn't be saying every single. You shouldn't be doing that. It's unacademic. It's journalistic speak. It's exaggeration, and it certainly doesn't have any place to someone who classifies themselves as the head of antiquities. I know he's not in that position anymore, but it's clumsy, and he shouldn't be doing it. So that was actually a good question by Piers, who's just coming for him for no reason. Mike Hunt says, keep hammering Zahi Hawass and Piers Morgan. I will indeed.
You know, I have to
And
tell
how many
you,
grains are there?
I discovered west of the Great Pyramid about 20 tombs. One of them mentioned in the Wad al-Jarf papyri that talking about building the pyramid by someone whose name was Mirror. We found the tombs of the pyramid builders at Giza. Big, major, important discovery. We found the tombs in the upper cemetery for the technicians with titles in hieroglyphic. Each title has to do with building the pyramid. The lower cemetery for the workmen who moved the stones. And next to this, Mark Cleaner excavated an area for sorting salted fish, the bakery for making bread, the houses and the villages that the workmen lived. Then I can talk to you. This is what I'm doing in the States now. This is top number 25 for me in my lecture in America, that really I'm presenting to the people all the evidence that we do have to say that Khufu built this pyramid. And this pyramid did not appear at once. No.
But the key recent discovery.
And here's the issue as well. That's once again, just going back to what I said, I still feel that the evidence that he presents is circumstantial. And I think at the crux of it is that I don't think there's many people out there, apart from obviously the ancient alien crowd, who are suggesting that the pyramids weren't built by the ancient Egyptians. And it's a possibility. Let's be very clear. There is a possibility that prior to the unification of the two lands, the pyramids were already standing. That's kind of an inkling that I felt. So I've never been certain about the alignment of the pyramids with the fourth dynasty rulers. It's not something that I write off, but it's also not something that I say with certainty. I think there's enough uncertainty around when the pyramids were built and who built them for me to not conclusively say these are absolutely the people who are responsible for it. I don't feel like I've been given enough evidence to be pushed in that direction. In fact, I'm quite strong that I haven't been enough evidence. And when I do feel like it's enough evidence, and this is coming from someone who I think the ancient Egyptians, I think ancient Egypt is an African civilization, and I obviously feel that they built the pyramid. Well, them building the pyramids is going to be beneficial to anything that I put out, but that's not going to be me sitting here and kind of shilling for my base, so to speak, and saying this pharaoh definitely did it here and this is how it was done. I don't feel like the evidence that's being presented is strong enough to make the claim or to make the argument. Just putting out that there are alternative ideas, not ancient aliens. I think either which way they've been built by Africans, but there are alternative ideas about their time. Those of you who know me know that I don't agree with the timelines, by the way. I might quote them and I might use them for the sake of simplicity in a piece of research that I'm doing, but I think the timelines of ancient Egypt have been greatly compressed. Even the king list timelines that we use, or the way they're interpreted, are greatly compressed. Many of the king's rules have been compressed to a couple years, a couple months in some cases, to squeeze all of those different kings in and to make the ancient Egyptian civilization start at a certain date. So I think there's a whole bunch of discussions that could be had about the longevity and the actual origin and start date of the ancient Egyptian civilization. I definitely feel like Eurocentrists did a massive job of contorting start dates to make Sumeria appear like the older civilization. And for those of you who are like, oh, you're a quack, this, that, and the other, I could show you a book right now, Anatoly Fomenko, The Problem of Chronology, and I could show you literally, even since the deciphering of the Rosetta Stone, the revision of the ancient Egyptian timelines has been consistent. So it's not like people think like where we are now with the kind of like 3200 BC, they think that's what we've already know. Just go back literally a couple of decades before and they were saying 5300 BC. They were saying 6000 BC, and then someone said 1100 BC. It's moved a lot for us to settle where we are now, and where we've settled at the moment, you'll find is not based on carbon dating, this, that, and the other. Most of it is based on kind of like epigraphical and paleographical, and kind of like setting a certain date and then doing relative dating based upon that date when we know this occurred, and therefore this happened afterwards. So even that does its job in screwing up the archaeological record as well, because they're using relative dating based on the archaeological records. So even when they're looking, you know, through layers, for instance, to kind of say, well, this happens here, they're not necessarily dating that using carbon dating. They're still using the relative dating based on the agreed dates of Egyptology. So there's a lot of question marks here, is the point that I'm raising. So I've not got my hat sitting firmly in any, or I'm not backing any horse at the moment. I'm quite open to a discussion around dates in Egyptology. I'm open to a discussion around origins. I'm open to even the discussion that certain things predate or post-date, you know, certain dynasties. I think all of those discussions are open until we get strong and conclusive evidence. Strong conclusive evidence is, you know, names and steles on tombs and cartouches and this, that, and the other. Most of which is missing in the three Great Pyramids and stuff like that. We're dealing with blank canvases a lot of the time in those cases. So it's just things like that I'm open to. But there you go.
That I believe you've made public is that it's always been traditionally assumed that the pyramids were built by 100,000 slaves. But you've done some research recently that you believe contradicts that theory. Your team unearthed tombs near the pyramids, you just touched on that suggest they were in fact built by highly skilled paid laborers under a strict regime and were not.
And just to be clear, so like, thanks for commenting. It says that people who say the pyramids were built thousands of years earlier open the door to by an earlier advanced civilization, opens the door to non-African theories. I don't care what it opens the door to. You have to understand that I'm going to say what I believe to be true. I'm not going to say something because it backs my argument, because you'll find when you have that kind of positioning, that's when you're going to see yourself exposed in the future. So when you're just backing something for the sake that it backs your argument, and you don't think the evidence is strong enough, but you got to back it anyway, you're only leaving yourself exposed for when the truth comes out about that. You've made yourself look like an idiot, like a bunch of these people who put too much credence in these haplotypes and genetic markers and this, that, and the other, and have just gone along haplessly as they've been marking off all of these markers as being Eurasian and just being happy with their one African marker. And I've poo-pooed the entire thing and said this needs a whole revision. And I'm glad that I took that position, because now down the line we can see that position was the right one to take, i.e. taking a more holistic and total look at how biased that is. And that's the same here. It's the same kind of thing we're dealing with here. I'm not going to go, oh, well, because Egyptology told me that this person built this pyramid and this, that, and the other, and these are the dates we've agreed in Egyptology that they're correct. No, I'm going to tell you what I think is incorrect. And I certainly believe that there's a lot of incorrect assumptions being made, particularly around dates. And if it means that stuff happened in Egypt's pre-dynastic era, okay, or ancient Egypt is much older than we thought it was, I'm very open to that. Why would I not be open to that? I'm very, very open to that. I think actually, if you look at many of the scholars, many of the original, black scholars who looked into ancient Egypt, that was kind of their gut feeling as well. They've always had the gut feeling that ancient Egypt is much older than what modern Egyptology has been putting out there. So I'll stick by that. Thank you to Surfactant. It says Chancellor Williams asserts they've been whitewashing and Asian washing Egypt for about 2,000 years. Imagine what we've lost. That would be amazing if true. That would be amazing if true. I would I'm not going to say I disagree with that. I don't know if white people extend into African antiquity that old. In fact, I strongly suggest they don't. So that's probably why I'm not saying he's incorrect, because Chancellor Williams was a scholar par excellence, brilliant researcher. I'll just say I'd be interested to see how that kind of like pans out. But I think certainly they've done enough damage in the last 300 years to make it seem like it's happened 2,000 years ago. Look at the statue of Second Waj Tawi, whose nose was intact and beard was intact when they brought him to the British Museum, and is knocked off, and then they blamed it on iconoclasm, and it turns out the British did it. Look at the 3 statues of Senusret III. In fact, I posted on my YouTube community, I did a post about Senusret III today. We did an article that has been posted to my website, tkmedu.com. Have a read for that article, because it talks about the deliberate and recent smashing of Senusret III's nose. And I am almost certain it was done recently, because basically where it's smashed, you can see it's kind of where they smashed his face, it's burst into like hundreds of fragments, which if it was done in antiquity, they would have been lost. It would have just been a big hole, but they've been all glued back meticulously. Like even tiny little fragments have all been glued back in place. And that suggests that happened probably in situ, because they were able to restore it to almost perfection apart from the nose, even though the entire face had been smashed. So these little clues with their sloppiness, they do leave you. But thank you for that donation. Let's carry on.
Not actually slaves, because the slaves, you've argued, wouldn't have had formal burial in close proximity to the pyramids. So A, just explain that to me, and B, explain why this is such a significant discovery in your opinion.
Okay, when we discovered the tombs of the pyramid builders, this discovery, based on the names that we found inside the upper cemetery, I can tell you that pyramids were built by the ancient Egyptian, because all the names that we found were Egyptian names. The second important thing, that there were no slaves. If there were slaves, the workmen will never be buried in the shadow of the pyramids. If there were slaves,
so this is one thing that I agree with Hawass on, is the fact that pyramids weren't built by slaves. I don't think that's a modern Egyptological, not even Egyptology, to be honest with you, modern mass media fallacy that was kind of like promoted by these old biblical narratives, who said, well, the ancient Egyptians enslaved the Hebrews. How do you make it obvious that these Hebrew slaves, if I'm directing a movie, how do you make it obvious that these Hebrew slaves are in Egypt? Okay, let's get them in front of the pyramids, building pyramids. That's basically where this entire rumor that the pyramids are built by slaves came from. Nothing more than that. Just a little bit of, modern illustrative creativity that has gone awry, and people suddenly start talking about the fact that the pyramids are built by slaves. There's just no evidence for that. And when you see people pushing that is just Eurocentrism gone crazy. They don't have any contemporaneous support. Just like Dragar 001 says, vandals be vandalizing. That's what they do. Let me read out another donation as well. Thank you, James. Rich James. I just got that. Rich James Beach. That took me a while. Took me a while to get that Dave Chappelle reference. Rhymes with millennial Ilenio means I have a lot of people behind me in a Nigerian dialect. Okay. Side note, Spanish and jollof rice share same resemblance. Hey, here. Okay, so go back through my shorts. Okay, I've got 2 shorts that go back to back about jollof rice. And I mentioned the fact that paella was likely introduced by Moorish traders through the basically through the Malian Empire. And so the origins of paella are probably the same as the origins of jollof rice, because it all originates basically in the Jollof Empire in Senegal and then makes its way through Africa. Amazing. Yeah. So we're on the same wavelength there. I've done a video about it. Doesn't that surprise you? TKM, the reconstruction guy, has done a video about Spanish paella coming from jollof rice. But you didn't know that. Yeah.
Slaves, they will never prepare their tombs for eternity like kings and queens. I want to tell you one important thing. There is a big difference between slavery in America in the past and Europe and in Egypt. In America and Europe, you can own a person. In ancient Egypt, you can have a servant working for you. Because I found one tomb west of the Great Pyramid. It's for a priest. His name is Kai. And at the entrance of his tomb, he's saying the following: I built my tomb. I hired workmen, sculptors, and artisans. I paid them beer and bread. I made them to be happy. And that's really an evidence to tell you that we have to understand the meaning of slavery in ancient Egypt. There was no slavery in ancient Egypt.
But that, I mean, it just seems to me, if you don't mind me saying,
can I just go bring that back? That's quite a good quote that he's pulled up there, which once again proves, okay, yeah, cool. That I like that. He's proved that it's not slavery, it's paid work. They're very happy. And I do think slavery is nuanced, by the way. If you've watched my latest recent, I don't know what to call it, but I've done a whole bunch of slavery content recently, ranging from the Black Sea slave trade to the Barbary Corsairs to slavery and, in the British Empire. So I've become a little bit of a slavery connoisseur for the past few videos. So it's kind of my hot topic at the moment. But I think slavery exists on a spectrum, exists on a continuum. And I think there's a lot of kind of like slavery analysts who agree with this viewpoint, in that work can become slavery. They kind of exist on the same continuum, dependent on how someone is being treated, as opposed to there being this kind of hard cutoff line between slavery and, there's no hard cutoff line between slavery and any kind of labor, really. It all depends what the conditions and the situation of your unfreedom is. Now, the reason I mention that is because he's done a good job proving that. I think that's a good quote he's read out. What he hasn't done is read out a quote as significant as that to go, oh, okay, well, they definitely built the pyramids then. He hasn't got a quote saying I was in charge of placing the pyramidion on top, or I was in charge of this, that, and the other. And these artisans were responsible for smoothing the limestone, and he doesn't have that. And this is the kind of conclusive evidence. He just sounds like he has a bunch of people who are working on buildings without being explicit about exactly what they're working on. So that's what I feel is missing in his kind of analysis, or at least his conclusion he's jumping to regarding they definitely built the pyramids.
Age book on Giza alone. And so, I'm not going to try and quibble with you about the history of the pyramids or anything. I would simply say it seems to me more logical, and correct me if I'm wrong here, more logical that, yes, I totally can see that a lot of the local artisans and others would be brought in on this incredible project.
I just want to kind of jump in here, because just want to say quickly here, RJ, that so far, unless we don't have a huge amount of evidence of slavery in Egypt. A lot of this is speculation, okay, and projection. So the discussion about slavery is all imposition from kind of like from Eurocentric ideals wanting to see slavery. We don't have overt evidence of it, perhaps like we do in, you know, different examples, Babylonian history, etc., etc. You know, we don't have overt examples of. I'm not saying it didn't exist, by the way. Let me make that very, very clear. But you have to kind of see where does it exist. We have to. Where's a citable example of slavery being used as a means of development in ancient Egypt? It doesn't feel like as a society they favored slavery that much. So I do think it's important to kind of like just to mention that at this point.
But is it not really stretching credibility that they would not have also used what we would categorize as slaves in some capacity? Because the work was so onerous, so tough, so hard, and it would take 100,000 or more people. Were there really 100,000 artisans prepared to do that kind of heavy-duty work, or is it not more likely that it was a mix of the two?
The number of the workmen that were involved in construction of the pyramid, based on our excavation, were only 10,000 workmen. And we have to understand that the Egyptian, before they began to build the pyramid, they had to make a big type of administration to cut a canal, to cut the harbor, for bringing stones from Aswan, from Torah, to set the workmen area. And this is why the 100,000 workmen were set by Herodotus, the father of the history, who came to Egypt in the middle of the 5th century BC. And Herodotus used to hear from guides. Then
here's a question for the community as well, because I know he's mentioned this canal from Aswan to Giza quite a lot as a means for transporting the stone, and I think that sounds, I'm with that. I haven't bought his book yet because his books are exorbitantly priced, and I don't like giving him money, to be quite frank, but I feel like I'll get to a point where I have to buy it just to kind of get access to this knowledge, because he's very good at gatekeeping it. But I'm going to ask the community, how much evidence is there kind of in archaeologically? Has anyone kind of excavated and found evidence of this canal? Has he mentioned it? He might have mentioned it already, but let me know. Is there evidence in the research, in the kind of like digging that he's done? Has he found the canals? He just speculated it? It would be nice to know if that is actually something that's tangible that he's been able to uncover, because obviously that does it puts a lot of weight. It still doesn't explicitly say that they were moving pyramid stones. They could be moving stones for other things, but it just still be interesting to know. Let me give a quick shout out to member James Stewart. Says there's an entire world political system rooted in the denigration of Black people as members of the African diaspora. No Africa, no modern Europe. Not sure what the last statement is, but yes, the entire world political system is rooted in the denigration of Black people. I think that goes without saying, and I think that's the common thread that I think non-Black races unanimously coalesce on this point, is that they're going to ignore Black suffering, B, they're going to gaslight Black people when we talk about our suffering, when we talk about the theft of stuff that belongs to us, when we talk about our history. They all work, and as much as they can be enemies, when it comes to the subject of Black people, it does seem like the entire world agrees where they want to keep us. That goes without saying, okay? And this is why I don't busy myself or bother myself with causes that are outside of Black melanated African communities. I just don't bother myself with them, because you'll put all of that effort in, and those same people that you've tried to help, you've tried to liberate, as soon as they're given the opportunity, they'll turn their sword on you as soon as they get the opportunity. And I saw this very, very explicitly. I used to be very much a free P kind of person. Yeah. I'm not going to say the name because then I'll draw in all of that kind of like attention. I don't want to get that. But you know, like free P, everyone's saying that at the moment, and everyone's going against those big evil guys that are trying to wipe them out. And I'm down for that. That's cool. But I'll tell you why I stopped doing it explicitly and openly, and why I'll never do it on the channel, is because when Libya was getting invaded, I saw a lot of people from that same jurisdiction very, very happy to get rid of the African dog, is what they called him. Get rid of the African dog, the African rat, this, that, and the other, blah, 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 like vile stuff. And when the genocide was being conducted against Libya's native black population and against the black immigrants, some native blacks, some black immigrants, when that genocide, racial genocide was being committed against them, you had no sympathy from this entire region. So this place that we'd been expending all of our energy supporting were just like, yeah. So it's kind of like, this is where I'm kind of like, no, you know what? I just can't even risk not focusing on, you know, that's what it is. I can't risk. I focus on, that's what I focus on. That's the only thing that I know, so to speak. You know what I mean? And I refuse to put my energy elsewhere. And that's not to say that I don't support them in their cause. It's just that I'm not going to support it explicitly because I've got other things that are more of a priority. That's the honest truth. But yeah, thank you very much for that post, James.
There is not any evidence of the 100,000, but we do believe, based on our work and our work on the discovery of the tombs of the pyramid builders and the workmen installation, that the workmen were only 10,000 workmen.
But I find that I'm not questioning your research. I'm simply raising a quizzical eye. For example, the World Cup football recently took place in Qatar. I went out there for it, and they built a number of stadiums over a few years. But I think they had around 10,000 people building those football stadiums. There's no comparison in the complexity and size of these stadiums to the pyramids, and they had all the benefit of modern technology to help them. So this idea that you could have the same number of people that built the World Cup stadiums for Qatar, and you could do the pyramids with them back in ancient times, it doesn't seem plausible to me.
Piers actually made a half decent point there. Okay, he actually made a half decent point there. That's me on the very rare occasion that I am agreeing with Piers Morgan. Yeah, he made a half decent point there. The scale doesn't match the task. Okay, the number of people, and this is one of the big issues I've got with Zahi Hawass's conclusions. Now, the scale could match the task, i.e., those 10,000 people could be capable of doing everything that Zahi Hawass did. But the one thing that you have to concede then, and this is where Zahi Hawass won't concede, is that they had access to technology. And I'm just saying the word technology here. I'm not saying alien technology, and I'm not saying lasers. Technology is any kind of instrument or tool, okay, that aids you to do a job. And I believe they had access to technology that we are not aware of. Technology that we're not aware of. Where your mind goes with that is totally up to you, because I'm not going to change the way I phrase that. I've always believed that we interpret the world through our own lenses, and our lenses are based on our current paradigms. We live currently in the plastic and metal world. So we think all technology revolves around plastics, metals, and electromagnetics. That's what our world revolves around at the moment. We think that is the very pinnacle of technology. We believe nothing can beat the plastic, metal, and electromagnetic world. Ancient people were not living by those paradigms, and therefore they had access and were able to do things that sit outside of our current realms of understanding at the moment. I'm not saying it was more advanced or less advanced. I'm just saying it was different. I've speculated the idea of organic technologies. And I know people, this is where it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's not supposed to. I don't believe any sane ancient societies, the only reason we're surrounded by plastics is because the people who run this world currently, the period of industrialization, those people were so spiritually decrepit that they did not care about creating a material that doesn't biodegrade and will serve no purpose outside of its very short shelf life, will just be useless and around for ages. We think we're in the most advanced, and really we're in the most spiritually backwards and mentally insane sect of humanity. That's what we're in at the moment. There's nothing to write home about here. There's nothing to say, oh, we're so advanced. Any people from outside coming to observe humanity in their current state would look at us and go, you guys are insane. What's a landfill? What's a landfill? Why have you got piles of useless crap that you can't do nothing with? Do you not realize you're going to fill the world up with this useless crap? Like, who does this? No one was doing this historically. There was no such thing as a landfill in historical times. Okay, now they exist in every nation and take up a nice percentage of the landmass. What a weird set of people that we think we are, that we think we're so technologically advanced. I guarantee you there are things that we just do not understand about the ancient world because we're so far removed on a spiritual level. Okay, and that's me. I'm not trying to do like the tinfoil hat thing here. I'm just think logically about these things. It's only capitalism and greed that has allowed your cupboard, like my cupboard downstairs, to be filled with plastic bags, and my room to be filled with all of this useless crap that after it runs its course is going to be here forever. What? Come on, this is not an advanced civilization as much as you feel it is.
You've probably seen the viral videos of a North Korean phone that secretly takes screenshots every 5 minutes, which are only accessible by authorities. You probably thought it could never happen here. But your data is not as secure as you think. Data brokers monitor all online activity, what you click, what you buy, and who you talk to. It can be sold to advertisers or even scammers.
Okay,
well,
ExpressVPN, let's just skip on. Sorry about that.
No, one thing I want to tell you, and this is what I'm saying always in my lectures. I'm saying, if you stood in front of the Great Pyramid today and you look at it, you will never believe that any human being can build it. Why? Because you don't know. And number two, we have to understand one thing, that the construction of the pyramid was a national project of the whole nation. The 3 million who lived in Egypt in that time, in the time of Khufu, participated in building the pyramid. Until now,
I'm skipping ahead because we heard all this in the Zahi Hawass Rogan interview, and I don't really want to hear it again. I'm kind of bored of it. So, sorry to those of you who are enjoying that. If you want to watch this in entirety, please do. Just type in Zahi Hawass / Piers Morgan, Piers Morgan, and you'll pull it up in your search feed. Haven't put the link in yet. I'm not sure if I will. I don't want to give Piers any extra views, but the reason I'm skipping ahead is I kind of want to get to the point where they're arguing now, okay? Because that's a bit more entertainment, and we are coming closer to having to wrap this live up. So let's get to the part where they start arguing, because that's where it gets interesting.
many of it, and there is others we'll reveal later. Then we are not objecting, but who should work in the pyramids? You have to bring scientists from a museum, from a university, but you cannot bring an amateur from New York or London to come and work in scientific.
Okay, well, that means that's quite interesting, because what they say, of course, is that it's a bit of a carve up, and that you guys are the pyramid establishment, and you don't like outsiders because you don't want them contradicting your narrative. So look, let's bring in the other two guests. Joining us now, two independent researchers and investigators of lost ancient history. Jimmy Corsetti, the host of the Bright Insight YouTube channel, and from the Debunking channel, Dan Richards. And welcome to both of you. We had you both on before, of course. Jimmy Corsetti, what would you like to say to Dr. Hawass about his recent revelation from his team's research that they believe the pyramids were not built by slaves, and there weren't 100,000, there were about 10,000, and they were artisans at the time?
To be honest, well, let me first say, Piers, thank you for having me back on. And Zahi, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. There's a few things I take issue with what he had.
In fairness, someone mentioned it earlier, but I feel like I'm more qualified than this guy to talk about this subject. I do, I'm just being honest with you, but I don't have the millions of followers, so you know it's not going to happen.
Said. First of all, this Scan Pyramids project, that initial discovery was back in 2016, and it was corroborated into a published study in 2017. Well, when you look from 2016 to 2025, that's 9 years ago. That's almost a decade. And I'm trying to understand why we wouldn't have drilled a 1/2-inch diameter hole and sent in a endoscope camera into this hidden chamber. Because let's not forget that the Great Pyramid of Giza is arguably the most mysterious and debated structure in all of human history. We don't know exactly how it was constructed. And in fact, how it was constructed is one of the most debated topics. Another debated topic is whether it was actually built to be a tomb for the pharaohs, because after all, we never found any mummy in any Egyptian pyramid ever. So with those two significant points of debate, we could squash those debates by simply going in and...
So I'm with him on the tombs thing. I've never believed, I've got to be straight with you, just the pyramids, the Great Pyramids. I've never believed there were tombs. We do know that the pyramids found throughout the Sudan, the Nubia region, we do know that they were tombs. At least that's what we're told, because they have the sarcophaguses inside them. They have all of the kind of funerary things that you expect to see. So there was a trend for using pyramids as tombs. They probably, in fact, I'd imagine they got the idea of the Giza pyramids being tombs from what they knew about the Nubian pyramids. That's probably where they transferred the idea over to say, oh no, these are just tombs. But like he's rightly said, don't believe we found sarcophagus in any of them. And there's never been a case in excavating tombs, even when tomb robbers have come, they don't steal the mummies, they don't steal the bodies. That's just not what they do. Okay, they take what is valuable, they leave the mummies, they leave the bodies. We know that insides of tombs are decorated. Now we do know this is obviously the 4th dynasty, so this would have been quite old. So perhaps the funerary practices that are seen in later dynasties, such as in the Middle and the New Kingdom, might not have fully been in place. But what we see is kind of like zero cultural continuity from pyramid tombs to stuff that we know is tombs. And then what we have is the kind of rejection of pyramids being used as tombs in later dynasties. They're no longer using pyramids as tombs. They are using certain differently shaped structures, but they're not necessarily, you know, in the pyramid shape. So it's kind of like there's a few things here where I kind of think he raises a good point. Let me give a quick shout to Dregger. Thank you for your $2. It says, isn't this white Atlantean? Yeah, so this is Jimmy Corsetti, and he's the one with the Atlantean is Reichardt structure in Mauritania idea. Let's carry on.
Exploring it. So I guess I have a question for Dr. Hawass at this time, which is, why haven't we drilled into that hidden chamber? When will we do it? And the third question is, has it already been done so in secret?
Wow, great questions. All right, Dr. Hawass, your response.
Now, number one, you have to understand, until today is in July 2025, we still have the Scan Pyramid team are working. You know that they found behind the main entrance the corridor, and they found above the Grand Gallery the big void. And the Egyptian team, the English team that working under me, they found some important voids. Until you have an archaeology You have to be patient. You have to study how are you going to drill, or the new techniques that they're using. The new techniques that they're using, like ultrasound and infrared, penetrating radar, all of this, you do not need to drill anymore. You can.
So, and here's where I might surprise you guys. It's on this point, and because of the comment that I put on the screen, this is one of the points where I'm actually with Zahi. I'm with Zahi on this one, which might surprise some of you. I think the kind of gung-ho cowboy approach of saying, oh, just drill a hole and see what's here, drill a hole and see what's there. That's what Egyptology has been doing for God knows how long, showing no respect to African artifacts, so no respect to, you know, these. We spoke about, even, you know, a few live streams ago about the pyramids that were blown up by the Italians, you know, the Nubian pyramids that were blown up by the Italians. This lack of respect for African artifacts, I kind of feel like, irrespective of what Eurocentrics and even modern Egyptians feel about the Egyptian civilization, we still know it's an African civilization. And in my view, any effort to preserve it and to save it and to keep it and not tamper it, not destroy it, not drill, not break it, I'm going to be with that. So if you're ever wondering about which side of the fence I'm on, I'm always going to be on the side of the fence that's the least destructive. I always give that kind of analogy. I know I've given it many times, but I think it's very fitting for what takes place in Egypt, is that analogy, or at least that story in the Bible where Solomon has the baby, or at least there's two women, they're both claiming the baby is theirs. Solomon says, I'll cut the baby in half. One of the women is like, yeah, cut the baby in half. We'll each take half home. If I can't have the baby, she can't have the baby. But then the true mother turns around and they're like, and the mother says, no, let her have the baby. It's okay. It's not my baby, because she couldn't bear to see her child killed. And then from that, Solomon knew that she was the real mother. And I feel like that's the case when it comes to ancient Egypt. Our reaction, our kind of like discomfort at the destruction of artifacts, I think that's one of the things that proves who is connected to that civilization, because I don't feel like that protectiveness is definitely not seen in the Eurocentrist crowd. It's seen very little. They're happy to tamper with artifacts, change noses. Even Professor Manu Ampon was talking about the fact he'll go to Egypt to this day and you'll see people rubbing at the steles, rubbing at the walls. If they see a nose that looks too round or lips that look too, they'll just destroy it right there and then. It's happening in real time. That proves only one thing, that you have nothing to do with that civilization for you to be happy to do that. Even the embracing of things that they know are fake. So when they embrace fakes like, you know, Hemi Inu or Nefertiti's bust, which they know is fake, they know it's been tampered by the Europeans, but they don't care because it looks like them. Truth doesn't matter to them. Kind of like the comment I was making with Sat 12 earlier. I don't care if it suits my argument. Am I going to start supporting fake artifacts because they support my argument? No, I want the real. I want what's true. Because when you're supporting what is true, you don't need the fabrications to support your position. You don't need to fabricate evidence. There'll be enough evidence there, you know. Yes, Maureen, Rahotep as well, another fake. You know, when they support stuff like that, it shows you what they're really about. So yeah, on this occasion, I'm with Zahi.
See what's behind a wall, because the English team from London and Sean, who's working for me, they found a void behind the northern entrance of the Queen Chamber with hieroglyphic signs. We are studying now how can we approach all these voids. But you have to understand one thing: we are not making anything secret. We advertise everything that we discover. We found above the King Chamber, in the 5 chambers, relieving chambers, 2 more names of the gangs who built the pyramids. And we found year 13 of Khufu's reign. And this is what I'm talking about in my lecture in the States now. This is my number 25 lecture that I am publishing, announcing to the public everything that we discover inside the Great Pyramid. Nothing is secret.
Okay,
sir.
well, that's good.
And that's nothing about his Zahi Hawass and his little secret tours. You know, come to my lectures, you know, his kind of like overpriced tours where he's revealing none of this is academic. None of this is academic. If he's got all of this evidence about, oh yeah, we found Khufu's name and it says 13th year of Khufu's reign and we found this name and that name, publish it, man. This guy is just a charlatan. He's an absolute charlatan. You know what I mean? Like, this is, I don't know, man. He's just it shouldn't be legal the way he moves. You know, it's not good at all. Thank you, Rush Beggy. Thank you very much for your $50 donation. Very generous. She says, "Good day, all. Great work. Would love your research so I can also educate." Well, the book is there. So have a look at the link in the description of the video, and I'll take you to my book sale. So yeah, I would love my book research to be accessible. By the way, on the book note, as the kind of like momentum's building and I'm thinking about other things that I can offer, if we do manage to hit the funding goal, I feel like I'm going to introduce some stretch goals, which will be additional literature. I don't want to confirm it just yet. I think I'm going to wait till we hit the 50% mark, and then I'm going to give some exciting announcements about other things that I'm going to give to people. These will be free upgrades, by the way, to people who have purchased the book. I'm thinking about something else that would be really, really cool to release as a part of this project, but I need to raise enough for it to be worthwhile. But I've got some really good ideas. But I've been getting, basically, to kind of like post a semi-spoiler, a lot of people have been talking about the accessibility of my book on a differentiated level in terms of age. You know, and obviously I've told them quite clearly my book is going to be kind of pitched at my channel level, and the articles on my website and my documentaries, they're all kind of pitched at a similar level. That's probably the kind of language I'm going to use when I write the book. That being said, I'm increasingly becoming being made aware of the fact that it would be great if I could do a book that was pitched at slightly younger people. And I'm actually starting to think about how I can make that a reality. So anyway, we'll get there in time. Thank you very much, Rush, for your donation. It's very generous. And by the way, guys, I'm only gonna be able to go on for about another 5 minutes, and I have to wrap this up. Okay. Sorry, I've got dinner plans with the family.
It's good to have that clarified. If you're stressed about back taxes, missed the April deadline, or your books are a mess, well, don't wait. The IRS is cracking. Can I just ask you, just on a personal level, about one thing that's constantly put out there as to whether you believe this is true, that the Great Pyramid of Giza is claimed to have a correlation with the Earth's circumference and polar radius, based on the idea that multiplying the pyramid's perimeter by 43,200 equals the Earth's equatorial circumference, and multiplying its height by 43,200 equals the Earth's polar radius. So that this number, 43,200, is also related to the precession of the Earth's axis. Is that all true?
I just want to jump in there about this point. Okay. The pyramid's relationship to the shape of the Earth could be a relationship to a circle. Because once you've got, I do think that the pyramid's calculations are based on spherical maths, and they could be based on the diameter of the Earth. But once we know that it's based on spherical mathematics, we can't. What's the point I'm trying to make? The point is that once you get the diameter, okay, then you're going to be able to get the circumference as well, because it's based on spherical mathematics. because the Earth's, well, the Earth's a sphere. So once you get one of those measurements, then it's kind of pointless saying the rest because we know that it's based on spherical maths. Does that kind of make sense? So it's kind of like that seems a bit arbitrary, that point. I don't think it's as strong, perhaps, as people think it is. That 43,200 multiplier. I'm not saying it's wrong, by the way. I just don't think it's massively strong. I think there's other correspondences that the pyramid does that are a bit stronger, but I don't think this one's like the strongest, in my opinion. So that one doesn't make me jump for joy. But what is clear is that there is mathematical brilliance in that it's based on spherical maths, and that is provable within itself. So without extrapolating this and saying, hey, it's based on the Earth's circumference and the Earth's system, within itself, the height, the relationship between the height and the base of the pyramid is very strong spherical mathematics in terms of the calculations that are made. So that's where I think that to me is where the wow factor lies, without bringing the shape of the Earth into it. Although it could be true, I just don't know if it's that strong.
You know, I'm not objecting any theory, but you have to understand, every day I hear a theory about a pyramid. Sometimes
But
I
that one is,
answer
I mean,
them.
that
You
one
know,
is an
for the last
amazing
3 months-
theory. If that theory is true, it is mind-blowing. Do you think it's true?
No one send it to me. I will study it, and I will.
You've not heard it?
It's the same number on the Sumerian kings list. 43,200 has been seen in ancient history inexplicably. And the Sumerians are the earliest document human civilization we have, and that number ties in with that. And real quick, I'm sorry, but Zahi, you didn't answer.
Yes, see, that's where I gotta react. You know what I'm gonna say about the whole Sumerian thing? Like, yeah, I'm not buying that. Let me give a quick shout out to Ikramuddin Zwani. How you doing, my brother? Thank you very much for your 35 Rand donation. Much appreciated. He says, hello, sir. Keep up the good work. I want to see you destroy Metatron and Luke Evans in a debate. Metatron should have just stuck to weaponry stuff. I don't think either of them would debate me, to be quite honest with you. Yeah, I don't think they would. I'm always open to having discussions. Sometimes I don't even like to frame it like a debate, because I don't think in the end I would need to debate, like, you know, native African black melanated Egypt proves itself. It's almost impossible. I just don't see what arguments anyone could raise. I would debate Zahi Hawass on this topic. I would debate bloody Flinders Petrie, like, because they would run out of material so quickly. It's unbelievable. It's like the weight of argument is in our favor, so, you know, so heavily. I just don't see where the debate is, and that's not me being arrogant. It's just being, once again, if you're grounded in the truth of the evidence without making too much speculation, it becomes really impossible to disprove the native black Africanity of the ancient Egyptian civilization, and that's just where I stand on it. Thank you very much. Shout out Drego again. Basic geometry must be tall, blonde. Okay. And Live Long Legacy, thank you for your $5. Says, I'm about to eat some Sudanese food right now. So am I. I need to get out of here. I've made a promise. Guys, how about I'm enjoying this live stream, and there's nearly 200 people online. I feel really bad to leave, but I did make plans. But I think we'll continue this. I'm going to part two this live stream for tomorrow. I think we'll finish watching this because it's getting interesting, and I think it's only going to get more interesting. I'm actually quite liking this. It's pretty laid back chat we're having, but I will part two this. Let's carry this on tomorrow. All right. Apologies that I've got to kind of cut it off early. I feel really guilty. Hit the likes up. I've amassed such a fantastic audience today. It feels like a waste, but I've got to go. Otherwise, I'm going to get in trouble. So thank you guys for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's do a part two tomorrow. I had something scheduled for tomorrow, well, in my mind for tomorrow's subject, but I'm now going to push it out by a day, and we'll do this part two because I've actually quite enjoyed just doing this little watch back. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Hit up the likes. Everybody, the weekend is just starting. Have a fantastic weekend. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for all of my generous donators. So that is Live Long Legacy, Dregar, Ikra Muddin, Rush, James Stewart, Rich James Beach, Surfactant, Mike, D Griff, and Marsha Bennett, my newest member. Oh yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate you all very much. Have a fantastic evening, and I'll see you in 24 hours. Peace. See you later.